Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowry.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Go to strengthguild.com, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to the Iron Radio collections, and we've got new shirts and new banners for you to support the show. Everything from just a regular banner, regular shirt, to ones with sayings on them, like Lonnie's Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree shirt. And some news for you, we're going to have some contests for people who own these shirts and things. So if you support the show, we'll let you more on that later. So if you get in on these early, you can be one of the first people to win some prizes. So thank you very much. Go check out the site, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to Iron Radio Collections and support the show.
Welcome, Iron Radio listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry. I'm an exercise physiology and nutrition professor of about 20 years, and I'm a former competitive bodybuilder.
This is Phil Stevens, strength coach, runner of Strength Guild, a powerlifter of about 20 years. Highland Games athlete, did strongman, did a little bit of everything. So
right on.
Hey, this is Dr. Mike T. Nelson, creator of the Flex Diet certification, associate professor of the Kerrigan Institute, and teaching again for Rocky Mountain University this quarter, of course, online.
Yep.
There you go.
Aren't we all, to some extent?
Yeah, everybody is now.
Yeah.
They're all joining in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're doing what we can with plexiglass and stuff, and I see students in some courses as little as once a week, but some of the faculty at my school, they did applications. They're all online all the time. They're like, I'm not even doing this, but I wanted to be there at least once a week especially for the freshmen and stuff, but yeah, it's Mike's way is becoming everybody's way now.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It's kind of weird, and as you guys all know, when you transition to teaching online, I mean, I taught in person for a while. It's just different, not good or bad. There's pros and cons to it, but I don't know. To me, it's still quite different. I've been doing it for many years.
Yeah. And everybody, we're going to check in with Phil mostly this episode because before we hit the record button, he was telling us a little bit about how was it Nationals that was going differently and plexiglass everywhere. And
Yep.
I promised last week to follow up on two things before Phil takes the wheel here.
Strength and muscle sport news.
One was, if you tuned in last week, anybody, Mike and I were talking about a study that came out, done primarily down Texas A&M, I think, about different sex spotters. And the conclusion, at least one of them, was depending on which estimation equation you use, because they were just predicting mostly, as far as I could tell, 1 rep max. But the female lifters produced higher 1 rep max, so higher max performance when spotted by a male compared to a female. And I just wanted to ask Phil, because Phil's got the in the trenches experience here. What do you see with opposite sex spotters, Phil? Does it affect performance at all?
God, in my gym, I don't think it does. And that's, you just hit me this question a few minutes ago, but I don't see a big difference in that. I tell you what I see the big difference is the level, the athletic level of the person spotting them.
Oh.
Generally, if one of my higher level lifters, be they female or male, is spotting a person, let's say a newer person, they tend to do better with the motivation of the higher level athlete. Like, oh, they're helping me. I better get on my game, type of thing.
Right.
That's what I see more. They step it up for somebody that they look up to, if that's what it is, probably.
Mm-hmm.
More so than a gender bias. But we also teach everybody right away to spot. So it's very normal for men, women, kids, whatever, to be spotting everybody else. So. Okay. I could see it maybe if you were in a situation where it's normally like one person, like coach is always spotting, and then the girl in the Globo gym you have the hots for, you get her to spot you. You're like, oh, yeah, I better show her what I got.
Yeah. Show off.
Type of thing, or vice versa.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we don't have to deal with a lot of that in our place. So
you have so many women, though. It's not like it's a rarity to have the girl come spot you,
Nope. It's very normal.
So...
Yeah, it's not rare at all. So, I mean, I guess maybe if I got a new guy in, and it's like day 2, and I'm getting spotted by a girl, it might negatively or positively affect him. Mm-hmm. But it gets normal real fast. So
right.
But that girl could probably outlift him too.
That's very true.
Right. I see what you're saying about experience level. I mean, I suppose even though you've known him for years, if Ed Cohn was spotting you, Phil, you'd probably want to show some respect and turn it up a notch, maybe.
Bad thing is, we were talking about this the other day. He always red lights me. Ed, I'm almost guaranteed a red light from Ed Cohn. I've competed in front of him 10 times, and he always red lights me and apologizes after. Wow. It's you don't have to apologize. I'm the one that messed up, Ed.
Right. Yeah.
But, yeah. So.
Yeah, you don't want him blowing sunshine and rainbows at you,
Yeah. So. Yep. But no, it's true. I mean, yeah, you get somebody you're looking up to. Yeah. If I was all of a sudden Ed's like, I'm going to spot you on your bench, I'm going to try really hard.
Yeah, you are.
So.
Yeah, makes sense. There was one other thing that I promised last week before we just check in with Phil's travels and deep in the world of powerlifting and Jim Wendler and his football obsession and all this stuff. We touched on briefly a study that actually Mike and I did with some students, and it's in Current Developments in Nutrition. It just came out midsummer. But it was about caffeine intake. Just through diet logs, and whether or not basically it wrecked people's autonomic drive. Did it mess with their fight or flight, sympathetic drive versus parasympathetic and all that. I don't know if you have that in front of you, Mike, or you remember?
So the formal title is Caffeine Intake Does Not Negatively Affect Heart Rate Variability in Physically Active University Students, Preliminary Findings. And so they looked at around about 24 people, ages 18 to 25. Didn't really have any other, conditions, generally healthy. Used the iFleet system, which you can run off of an app and just a standard heart rate strap now. And the results were that average caffeine intake did not significantly correlate with average heart rate variability. So a comparison of caffeine intake with individual day heart rate variability measures were similarly weakly positive and non-significant, with the exception of the final day of recording. And so in English, what all this means is that we know caffeine, especially in coffee, can be a nervous system stimulant. But if you're looking at changes in autonomic tone, the association between coffee and HRV, at least, was not really significant in this study. Now, again, we're not necessarily looking at it, I guess you could say super acute per se, because It was done over multiple days. And then you're also looking at, pretty healthy young individuals also. So it may be different in other populations. Obviously, the dose at some point is going to matter. But my gut feeling is that I think in healthy individuals, especially people with good aerobic systems and not any other issues, they can probably buffer even coffee and caffeine intake and not see it as be a completely negative stressor on their autonomic nervous system. But again, dose at some point is going to matter too. If you're sucking down 8, cups of coffee every day and sleeping on 4 hours and everything else and unhealthy, that's a completely different world that we didn't look at in the study.
Yeah. I think, we really needed Mike as one of the senior authors on this, right? Because here's some gold nuggets for everybody. I mean, takeaways is, yes, acutely caffeine's going to stimulate you, right? Your sympathetic drive a little bit, raise epi and norepi in your body. I mean, we've looked at that ourselves. In fact, it was a little bit higher in women. Women were responding a little bit more, even when adjusted for body mass and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I guess I was interested that, a lot of people, Phil does it, I do it, Mike, you do it, almost everybody I know, either coffee or energy drinks or something. Sometimes you get in periods of several weeks at a time where you're regularly consuming this stuff, and the idea is there any background agitation that you just don't need, it would harm recovery or whatever, lead to overtraining maybe. And Mike, you've said over the years that a couple of things. One, like you'll say that alcohol tends to wreck HRV, or many days of no sleep. Not just one or two, but if you keep abusing yourself with no sleep, you'll see HRV really go down and that kind of stuff. And I just wanted to see because this is just caffeine. Most of the stuff we've been doing, of course, is coffee all the time. But this is coffee, energy drinks, pre-workouts, pills, powders, don't care.
Yeah, any form.
Yeah, and it just wasn't it wasn't hurting these young athletes. But, they're pretty robust, kind of to your point, Mike,
Yeah, and if you get further into the weeds, too, and you start looking at potential sources of caffeine, so some of the different studies that were done looking at coffee as a source of caffeine, you get kind of a weird biphasic response if you're doing HRV acutely. So say we give you a big cup of coffee and then we start measuring your HRV immediately after that. For a short period of time, you can actually become a little bit more parasympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
Most people at a high enough dose do become much more sympathetic or stressed. Again, this is acutely like a one-off measurement. The downside with coffee is that like you mentioned, Lonnie, everybody has their own kind of associations with it. If you're someone who drinks coffee before you go to the gym, I would guess that you're probably going to be a little bit more on the sympathetic side. If you're someone who likes to hang out on Sunday mornings and relax and have a cup of coffee, just because of all the neural associations with it and the smell and the taste and the texture, all those things, you may be more on the parasympathetic side, even if we try to equate for the amount of caffeine in it.
Mm-hmm.
So once you start looking at other sources of it in different time points, you can see some different results. I just started years ago looking at caffeine related to energy drinks. And in general, we found that, oddly enough, it didn't seem to alter heart rate variability, but we did see a bump in resting heart rate, which was kind of surprising. So it's not because people are probably like, why are you studying caffeine and HRV? Of course it's going to wreck it at some point. But like most things, it's not quite that simple.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I'm going to talk to you off air about some of that stuff because, of course, this was setting the stage because we have a nice data set looking at medium-high doses of caffeine and what happened to their sympathetic drive, right? Their fight or flight nervous system activity was the opposite of what I expected. And so I'm eager. I can't let the cat out of the bag too much with that, but just to give everybody some background, research builds on itself. We scaffold it. So we've established that chronically, and when you do even a 3 or 4 day diet record, the idea is it's supposed to be a indication of your chronic intake, your ongoing, that's how your diet is, we assume that. And it didn't do anything there, so now we're going to go look more acutely with a specific kind of coffee, and, obviously coffee's not just liquid caffeine and all that, so. The other gold nugget, if anybody does use heart rate variability as a marker of overtraining and whatnot, something that I really picked up from Mike, it's just helpful to have someone with engineering background, is that sort of metronomic breathing that you have to do. It really made me question the stuff that you might see that's much more indirect from like an Apple Watch or something like that, because this app, you actually inhale and exhale very rhythmically because that affects your heart rate variability. And so, I thought that was valuable input that listeners might benefit from too. Like if you're going to do HRV, you got to do that right. There are certain control variables you just have to account for.
Yeah, and a lot of the watches, I'm not entirely convinced yet that the optical location off a watch, because there's a little light in the back, and they've changed the algorithms now. They're going to different colored lights and a bunch of other stuff. But I'm not convinced that for HRV, they're super accurate yet. I think they'll get you in the ballpark, and they'll definitely give you a number, but I'm not convinced at this point it's going to be super accurate, but that may change in the future.
Yeah, I hope it does. I'm waiting for once watches can do some things like realistically predict. I don't think they're going to directly sample, but somehow predict different blood variables like blood glucose or something from sweat or interstitial fluid. Then I'm in. Until then, I'm not in. So.
Yeah, and that's how continuous glucose monitors do it.
Right.
And I've had one put on my tricep for quite a while. I've stuck one on my wife on her left tricep and her right tricep to compare them, see how close it was. But that's actually looking at interstitial glucose. It's just this little tiny horsehair needle that goes in and does a sample every few minutes, and it's super interesting. You can get some, fascinating data from that to see kind of the variability in what you respond to in different conditions.
Yeah, that's what I want to go with next, because I'm doing brain comparison with little handheld finger prick glucometers, and I'm not convinced that they're much above suck.
Yeah,
so
they're variable.
Yeah.
And then if you compare continuous glucose monitor to a finger prick, you actually get into the whole dynamics of it's a little bit different because you're sampling blood versus interstitial fluid, and you've got two different systems and a lot number of the strips of where they were made. And
Yep.
It gets messy.
I got IRB approval to use the continuous, the CGM stuff, continuous glucose monitoring, but I want to move in that direction for sure. It's just compliance is better. Everything's just going to be better. Not to mention you get like 2 weeks worth of data, which is just juicy. Anyway, I promised we wouldn't go off the deep end with the science though. So last, before we go to break, and then we check in with Phil in the world of powerlifting, a couple of Iron Radio housekeeping bits. The fall funds drive is going to come up soon. I'm just going to give everybody a warning. We don't pester you year round. I mean, we're public supported. So the fall is when we start to roll that stuff out. Usually it's just a comment or two from me or a mid-show, like a little reminder sort of thing that you guys keep us running. And I try in the show notes to cycle through, the hardcore supporters. And so that's what pays for the server. That's why you can hear us right now, that kind of thing. Also, oh my God, it's episode 591. We are coming up on episode 600. 600.
A lot.
That's crazy.
And Phil had some nice Iron Radio T-shirts, and we were giving them away at the Arnold this year, but that was very weird and sort of like, it was like this Half-Life, like zombified. Like there was some people milling around, and there were some events going on, and Phil and his crew are like, shoving T-shirts on people and stuff.
Yeah.
But I still have a bunch, and so if you want that sort of one-off, it's almost like a little historical marker. The year that the Arnold was crazy, was limping along. I think we'll just start giving those away. I thought what we might do is, if you make a iTunes review and a comment on one of our taste tests on YouTube, do one of each of those, and then just say something on our Facebook page or fire us an email through ironradio.org. I'll send you a T-shirt. I mean, we got them. Might as well spread the wealth. So it's not so much a contest as it is, just honor system. Verify that you made an iTunes review and a comment on YouTube Taste Test, where we have comments open. And we'll give you a T-shirt. So a little way to celebrate episode 600.
There you go.
All right, let's go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk Jim Wendler and powerlifting and Phil's athletes kicking butt.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, you know who this is. So I'm here to tell you about Dr. Mike T. Nelson's new book, Why You Should Eat Keto. I don't do it because, look at me. Come on, I'm fabulous and I'm fantastic. Anyway, you should text the Keto ebook, all in one word, to 44222 to receive your free copy. Do it now!
Okay, listeners, after more than a decade of joining us on the podcast airwaves, you can now also become viewers on YouTube. This is not our usual simple backup of the audio show, but rather a growing body of video taste tests covering various foods of interest to nutrition enthusiasts, bodybuilders, and powerlifters. From within YouTube, simply search for Iron Radio Taste Test or Nutrition Radio Taste Test. In about 15 minutes, we cover taste and texture similar to other products, usefulness to the co-hosts, and whether we would recommend the product to certain clients. You may even want to watch our podcast feed or Facebook group for which products are coming down the pike so you can taste test them with us. Join us for this new monthly project. Iron Radio is, of course, primarily a podcast. But over the years, there have been technical glitches calling for backup streaming and listeners who wanted the convenience of other sources of audio content. Toward this end, Iron Radio is now simulcast and backed up on YouTube. If needed, please search Lawnman07 or Iron Radio from within YouTube. There's not much video, but if you like to listen through YouTube on a Roku or other living room device, there you go.
Like your weekly fix of Iron Radio? In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more. That's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
Okay, we're back, and I'm glad to be back. It's been a crazy month, so I've been like Mike, and Mike's been like me, it seems like.
Yeah, we traded worlds.
Traveling. I was traveling every weekend for a month. I logged like 100 and some hours behind the windshield.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was bad. But, no, last weekend had the pleasure to head down to Columbus. And in doing so, we were going there for nationals, and I've always wanted to catch one of Windler's football games on a Friday night. So decided to head down early and do that. And yeah, I mean, it was a little weird. We had to, like, I had to go on the sidelines as a coach, because like the fans are very limited right now. They're like selling tickets online to high school football games and things like that, which I don't know, that may be normal in Ohio anyways, just because it's, football's a religion like Texas, but
yeah.
But it was different, and like, the crowds were very limited. And no, it was just a pleasure to see. Like, the one thing that stuck out to me was, because Jim always talks about it, and it's one thing for somebody to always talk about something, but you want to see it. How his guys, basically he always talks about the way to win a football game is to bring your average guys up over their average guys. It's like, don't worry about your stars. Your stars are always going to be stars. But if you can bring your average up, basically over their average, you're going to win. And it was pretty evident. We started out the first quarter and things were pretty even, kind of a stalemate going on, both sides of kids kicking each other's butts. And then you could tell about halfway through the second quarter, the other team was just done. They were just done getting beat up. And it was funny because, the London team, which Jim helps strength coach, they literally don't line up. They line up and nobody is outside the tackle. They just show you, look, okay, we're running it right here. So go ahead and try and stop us. And they just run it right up the gut, and they were just mowing them down. Numerous quarterback sneaks for 9 yards plus. And that's usually a play where you'll get a yard or two. It's 4th and 1. We're going to go for a quarterback sneak. No, they busted out for 9 or 10.
Nice.
So I mean, it was just very evident. And then you saw the kids then, of course, fed off that. We're killing them. So then they started getting fired up, and it was a good time. I mean, it was good seeing that come to fruition, and it's just talking to him, knowing him, it's from just real basic training. They dumb everything down to a point, and they don't make it super complicated. Don't overrun the kids. Don't do any of that. And just make them stronger. I mean, these kids were built and they were strong, and then they had the ability to endure it. So Conditioning wise, I know he does things a lot different than most people. There's none of the, okay, we're going to go run laps for hours and no 2-a-days. They cut 2-a-days right when he got there. Like, we're not doing that. It makes no sense. It just wears them out. All running's done at like 70-80%. But they do it over and over again, you know? So, yeah, I mean, that was good to see. And then, I mean, there was a bunch of other stuff me and Jim got into that probably shouldn't be said on the air, but it was just good catching up. It was good catching up. I tried to make it over to Lead FTS, but I forgot we lose an hour when I'm driving to Ohio.
Yes.
So, yeah, all of a sudden we were an hour late, but, so it didn't make it over there. But then next day, you know, the big thing I had going on is, one of my kids qualified for nationals, and, props out to this kid. I couldn't have done what he did. So he had a game. So I'm watching Windler's football game. He was playing a football game in Kansas while I'm watching Windler's game the night before he has to lift. And he plays at a small school, much like Jim's team in London. It's the Rossville Bulldogs. And so he plays both ways. Plays fullback and linebacker. And his coach played him for 3.5 quarters in this football game. Oof. So he's running every down, and then, okay, time to switch teams. And he's chasing people down that are running the next, the other half of the time. Did that till like 10 o'clock at night. They didn't hit the road till almost midnight, and he had to somehow make it to Columbus, Ohio in 8.5 hours. And it's about 11.5-hour drive. They made it, barely. So he got out of his car by 8:45. We had to start warming up at 9:15. So, jeez. Yeah, so that was the start of it. But it was in the same hall that is in the Greater Columbus Convention Center. So same place the Arnold's held. So the big venue. They had, 300 or 600 lifters a day for 4 days. So, I mean, it was a big one. And number one thing you noticed, everybody wearing masks, of course, except for the security guards, which was weird. But then you walk in the room, they had it divided out. Your warm-up room, they did a really good job, and I actually think they need to do this from here on out. They just didn't allow you. They called like, okay, Flight B can go in the warm-up room now. Normally it's like Flight B should start warming up. They kind of give you a warning. Like, you were not allowed in there unless you were supposed to be, which kept it cleaned out. You weren't tripping over each other, and you had your time to be in there. And then if you weren't, you had to get the hell out. And they came and checked, and everybody had, like, I had a coach's badge that said my flight, like I'm day 2, Flight B on the blue platform. So I was allowed to be in there at that time, and it cleared everything out real well. The odd thing was they built in this huge convention center, somebody took the time to build a giant, 100-foot by 30 feet tall plexiglass wall.
Oh my God.
It was big. And that's where the spectators got to be, was behind the plexiglass. So, I mean, you could see it. And then they had, if you were a parent or something, they had a small section up front that you could come into only while your lifter was there. But general spectators behind the plexiglass, and your lifters, even as a lifter, you're masked up until you're on the platform. They allowed to take them off for the lifts. And you put your mask back on. But it went well. Caden killed it. He came out, and I think nerves got to him, and probably a car drive at 100 miles an hour for 9 hours. But came in, missed his first squat, got called on depth. And that was our plan, was opener, world record, then see what was there. So we went ahead and stuck with that again. He killed that, and then he came back and he crushed the world record. That was his easiest squat of the day, was his third. So we're talking about a 165-pound 17-year-old. He squatted 459, I think it was.
Oof.
So
nice.
In belt and wraps. So did that. We knew the bench was out of his reach right now. He's just not a big benching kid. The record's 275 for a 165-pound 17-year-old, and he ended up at 245, 255.
Respectable,
I had to look back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we weren't too worried about it. What we knew we needed was more than 220 to go with his deadlift to break the total world record. So we got that on our first and just moved from there. Hit his second and then didn't get his third. Then it was on to deadlift, and ended up with a 4:45, I think. So, which was another world record and tied up the world record total. So, all in all, good day. I saw your usual stuff at powerlifting meets that one would not expect to see at a nationals. There was one guy in the back room, had a kid with him that his shirt said personal trainer. Apparently this was his coach. They literally warmed up to 10 kilos past his third attempt.
What?
In the warm-up room.
Huh.
Yeah, because I see him struggle with this. I was like, oh, boy. And then I'm watching him because he's lifting before my guy. And, like, his last attempt was 10 kilos less than what he hit in the back room. So a lot of weird stuff like that. It's like, know the rules, know your attempts, and, lots of missed lifts from going too heavy. I don't know what it is. I mean, I've said it a million times, and I know every coach that knows anything has said it, that many times as well. It's 3 lifts. Get your opener. You should open with something that's very easy to do.
Confidence.
You get your confidence behind you. Yeah. And that's like, I mean, a lot of people say what I do, lift something that you can hit for a triple on a bad day.
Wise.
You're going to get it. If I come down with, Magic Johnson AIDS and cancer the night before, I'm still going to get it. Probably not the bad AIDS, but if I get the good AIDS, I got it. So, So, I mean, there was that, and, we just had it was generally a good time, and it's good to see there's starting to be some events again. They're different, but it's nice to see them again. Because normally I'd be gearing up right now for my winter meet, and I just have no idea where I'm going to lift. So I'm not planning one until I have somewhere to go that's worthwhile. So, but we're starting to see some come down the pipes, and hopefully I'll sit back and watch and try and plan one for myself. But the other thing that we ended up talking about was training and the longevity of lifters comparatively today than there was yesteryear, if you will. Like we were talking about before the show, you got people like Ed Cohn and people like Wendler and people like Kirk Kowalski, and you look back at that era, and lifters generally had a 10+ year competitive span, where and you can see they always started out their competitive career generally started well. They didn't start in it until they were okay, and then so they've been training for we don't know, but I mean I'm expecting 5+ years before they even stepped on the platform. And then they get another 10 years out of it where they're competing at a high level. I'm not talking just competing, but competing at a high level. And now we see it a lot of the time. It's all of a sudden some kid comes on the scene and they're like, oh my God, he's going to be the next great thing. And then a year and a half, 2 years later, he's not like, what happened to Joe? Where's he at? And they're wrecked. And I think a lot of it has to do with, I'm not blaming this on CrossFit. I'm just using this as an example. It's that mentality. And it's a mentality we were pushed too. I mean, at certain points of an early age of every workout needs to, basically, if you're not bleeding and sucking wind, you didn't have a good workout. And that's not sustainable. I mean, and it's the same thing with, like we talked about at the beginning of this segment with Wendler's powerlifting team. If you back it off a little bit and start looking at next year, instead of tomorrow or 5 years from now or 10 years from now, and make that your goal and not need everything tomorrow, you generally end up making it further and you have less dings and dents. Like I can take one of my lifters and say, we're going to get here in 6 months where I'd normally plan to go in a year. But at what cost? And that's what we're seeing a lot of. You're seeing a lot of people get tore down real early. And I'm even seeing the strongman. I follow several strongman groups, and we're having a big push in my gym going for strongman. All these people just come in. They don't want to put the time in. They have this idea and this love of, I want to be great at this sport, but they want it tomorrow and don't realize that if you look back, these people took 10 and 20 years to get there.
Strategy. Yeah, career.
And they're trying to pack all this work in and get there tomorrow, and what ends up happening is, you can only I've got a little Ford Focus that I drive that it's my little gas, mileage car.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go out there and I hammer that pedal down, yeah, it's going to go. For how long? We're not that much different. When you break it down, we're a complex machine with a bunch of parts, and those parts blow up, especially if you redline it all the time. And we're seeing that a lot, man. And it's kind of sad. And that's one difference. Luckily, my lifters were talking to me about it. They're like, yeah, you take your approach is just different than they're used to, which is sad to me because that means everybody else is, pushing this style of training.
Right.
And the one thing I'm most proud of, I'm hugely proud about all the records we've broken and all my kids breaking world records and my people and things like that. And Brian being the 5th man to squat and deadlift 900 in the same meet. But I'm also more proud, like we've had no injuries, no bad injuries. I mean, no career ending injuries.
Mm-hmm.
We've had dings and dents. That's going to happen in any sport. My hamstring's kind of, I got a twiggle or whatever you want to call it in your hamstring, but we've had
I'm using that
now. And I don't know why. It's like people don't mind just getting wrecked. And that's, hell, I'm wrecked. But it's from 20 plus years of competing.
Yeah.
You're gonna get there. You don't need to rush it.
Yeah. Phil, I don't know if this is true across all sports, but in muscle sports, it is so true. I mean, think about not just the abusive workouts, In fact, one thing I learned from you, I think, talking to you and Rob about powerlifting was sometimes you walk away with a little left in the tank. That's okay. But whereas bodybuilders are more prone to, destroy, they just do everything until they're completely gassed. But if you think about not just training, but the popularity of some of these diets that don't really provide the nutrients for career longevity, if it fits your macros, screw micronutrition of any kind, or multi-gram use among adult lifters of anabolics and stuff. It's all like you said. It's like I'd rather burn out than fade away. It's like, but there's something to be said for career longevity, isn't there? Because especially in a sport where you should be peaking in your late 30s, I think.
Yes.
Anyway,
and it's also. I mean, you look at that, and you see a guy that comes up and squats 1,000 pounds once. That's neat. But let's look at a guy who's like Andre Milenichuk. Dude has hit 1,000 pound squat I don't know how many times now. 40 meets, whatever
countless.
It is.
Yeah.
Now that's impressive. He wasn't able to just do it. He did it again and again and again and again and again. And, you'll see him 5 more pounds. Now we're going for 1,027, and there's something impressive about that to me. Somebody that's been doing it. And I mean, not to toot my own horn. I mean, I was talking about this the other day. I have pulled no less than 700 for 13 years in a meet.
Wow. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of abuse over time too. But I mean, and I've changed my training style, and that's the tough part is, I think early on, I still don't know if we have to. Because at some point, it's hard to. If you don't know where your red line is, it's hard to know how far you can push it, if that makes sense. If you never take a person and push them to their limit, or at least their perceived limit, do they know what 80% is?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough one. But then at the same time, it's also realizing that somebody beginning shouldn't train like me. Somebody that is, what Dave Tate say, that, shit, suck, mediocre, elite. If you're shit, if your weak point is you, we could probably push you a lot harder. Your potential to damage yourself, aside from funky form issues, is much different. Like if your max squat, if you're a grown dude, or even a 17-year-old kid, and your max squat's 185, compared to my kid that just went here and his max squat is 459, we can push the volume and the intensity up quite a bit higher and not have to worry about massive tissue and joint damage, aside from if your form's just horrible. And that's, I think we need to push them a little bit when they're younger, and then realize that as I get stronger, I just can't do that anymore. I can't take Brian or Dal that are squatting 900. Okay, we're going to freaking do 50 reps at 70%. It's not happening. But some people are still trying that because they're thinking this, they need to kick their butts in the dirt to make progress. And at that level, I think the intensity drives progress a little bit. And that's where you get at with, like you said, the difference between powerlifting and bodybuilding. You can build a lot of tissue without having to go to a 900-pound squat. It's just not needed. I don't think it's needed at all. I can't tell you if there's like Ronnie Coleman did 800 for a triple or whatever it was, but I never saw him squat 900. And did he need to? No, he was freaking huge. He probably didn't need to do 800 for 3. So I think he just liked lifting heavy. That's what we listened to that on the way to Ohio. We listened to his interview with Rogan.
Oh yeah,
how he still says, his one regret is not taking that 800 for like 2 more reps. But
interesting,
so crazy.
But I mean, the point is, in strength sports, byproduct of the sport, we have to go heavy. You just have to at some point.
What's the goal?
Yeah, that is the whole sport. So if you don't like that, don't get into the sport. And it's also crossing this place with yourself that know that most likely I'm tearing myself up. Like I was talking about this with a lifter yesterday, like me squatting and deadlifting 700 pounds consistently. I'm not stupid enough to think it's not doing something bad to me. It's not for my health at this point. I know, but what I'm trying to do is minimize the damage done. Minimize the long-lasting damage done. I know my spine's taking a beating, my hips are taking a beating, my knees are taking a beating. So why am I going to grind myself in the dirt when I can? I'd rather find the maybe close to the minimal effective dose to make progress. And let's drag that out, especially once you start getting into the intermediate and elite stages. Let's slow it down. Let's minimize these injuries. Let's just still make progress. That's the goal. But if we start talking, I want to go from 950 deadlift to 1,000 in 12 weeks. The things and the pharmaceuticals that's going to take are probably going to take a really, really big toll on you're going to do years of damage in 12 weeks, and then where are you at? Because you rush this forward. When if we slow this down, make it a 3-year goal, now hopefully we can minimize the damage it took. But it's part of society. Everything now is next second. Our news, our food, our everything we want in 5 seconds. So, and that's where, to me, I have more respect for the person who's been doing it at a very high level for years than the person who just showed up very high level and then they're gone. Aside from the freak accident, that's going to happen. I mean, who is Bo Jackson? It's sad that he didn't have a longer career. But crazy things happen. It wasn't in the cards, but things like that we talk about a lot. So, I mean, ways around it, and if you just allow yourself to slow down and enjoy the ride, and become a lifer, you don't have to have it tomorrow. And the realization that I can probably make it further than I ever expected if I just slow those goals down, even if you push them back a year, and just consistently keep kicking your own butt, and all of a sudden what happens is you're kicking other people's butts. So but it's a tough one.
There's something to be said for being that, almost like Conan the King on the throne. You got some gray in your beard and you're still an animal, as opposed to just broken. It's easy for a 20-year-old to be like, I want to burn out and then fade away. Listen, in all likelihood, take this from someone who's 50 plus. I can't believe I'm saying that, but you don't want to just degrade, fall apart into like this, sloppy beanbag chair of weakness, once you're, 50 or 60 years old.
Yeah.
you're gonna have a little. You're gonna be glad that you did have some eye toward injury prevention. I mean, Eddie Cohn, right? Even when he was younger, wasn't that his like big thing? Like, don't blow something out. Don't have a catastrophic injury.
And that's what like he talked about. He's like, one of his big things is you only have so many max attempts in your life. Only take them on the platform. You know, he just do not take maxes in the gym is one of his big things. It's like only take them on, like go on the platform and do it where it counts.
Wow, yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it really does. And now I think social media is a big pusher of this. I've seen a lot of lifters ruined from that. They get in this culture of needing to post. So they're doing things just for that. And it happens every day then. They get caught up in this culture. Well, I need to post another video of something amazing. So they're always trying to do something amazing.
Yeah.
And then they're just hurt. It's just bad. You know, and it doesn't count there. Nobody tomorrow people won't remember that. Well, maybe tomorrow, but by next week, that lift you put on YouTube is buried by 7 million other lifts.
Next week. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not going to be, nobody's going to remember it. But if it's on the record, it's on a platform, that gets remembered. You know, it's in the books. You know, it's written somewhere that's more concrete. Mm-hmm. And you had, aside from this weekend at Nationals, you probably had at least 50 or 100 people there to witness it. Not, you weren't in your garage with a camera. You know, so you'll have memories built from watching you do that. Yeah, and that's like me at this point. I mean, like Ronnie Coleman's interview really struck me, and I mean, I was talking about this with my wife and some lifters. Like my wife and I talked after my hip and my hamstring about me stopping lifting, like heavy. I'll never stop lifting. And I tried it for like 2 years, and then she's like, "You got to go back. You got to get back."
You're impossible.
I was just miserable. Yeah, and I love it too much. And at this point, I kind of know that I'll probably just do this forever, as long as I'm allowed, because I just love lifting heavy. As long as this flesh bag will allow me to go in there and try and squat 600, 700, 800 pounds, I'm going to do it. But at the same time, I've learned a lot, and I know the days like I'm supposed to go in and hit fairly heavy singles a day. But I have no problem if I get to 495, 550, and it ain't right.
Yeah,
I'm smart enough to walk away. Mm-hmm. You know, there's always tomorrow. There's next Saturday. You know, there's hundreds of next Saturdays. I don't need to push it to. I got nothing to prove there. You know, it's me going for 750 today when it doesn't feel right is just stupid. You know, I'm not even at a meet. I'll do the same thing. Like, it's not there. I'm gonna hurt myself. I'm not gonna push it, man. I can do another meet in 6 months. You know.
Yeah.
But I think part of that is giving yourself the luxury of time.
Yeah.
You know, like, so for even some of my, you know, top lifts with Denny Stone and inch dumbbell and stuff, like I literally gave myself a decade and a half.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yes.
One, because I'm starting so incredibly low, and two, I know that my rate of progress is not real fast, even if I do everything correct. And it's just going to take time. And if I try to rush that, I know I'm going to do stupid things to make an arbitrary timeline that the reality is no one cares.
No one cares.
Like, nobody cares, really. You know, so I'm just potentially giving myself more stress and increasing the risk of being injured.
Yeah. And there's something fascinating and something attractive, like Lonnie said, about being the old Conan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That dude's been doing it 30 years. Look at him. He's still going. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Compared to the punk kid that has an ego bigger than my door and comes in and trashes himself. And he's gone. And everybody's like, God, I'm glad he's gone. You know? I mean, I don't know. It's just different. Society's different. And how we were even talking about just powerlifting in general. A little off topic here, but just how it's changed. And a lot of it is that, if you look at it, a lot of it is that when I used to go to powerlifting meets, when I started, it was a much different scene. But they were all lifers.
Yeah.
You know, everybody there was like, you could tell they'd been doing this for a lot of them 30 years. And then the other ones were their students, you know, but it was like, now you can tell, like, oh yeah, he's here because powerlifting's cool right now. And he'll be gone next year. It's a different scene. There's good and bad to it. I love that powerlifting is much bigger, but there's a lot of it I hate about it. Like now the injury rate is much higher than it was. The amount of people just falling out, the amount of people with potential, like great potential, being pushed in a wrong direction and injured way too early in the sake of a PR is pretty disgusting to me. Like if you just held back the throttle a little bit, you could have been great. You could have been that next, because you get a bigger pool of athletes, and now your potential for, if you have 600 athletes, your potential for 5 freaks is much higher than if you have 100 athletes. You've got a bigger pool of athletes, so that potential of breaking those records is there if they get the right tutelage, and we're not seeing it. This is my push, I guess. People just slow down, relax, and enjoy the ride. Once you start enjoying the ride, you're going to start getting somewhere, and hopefully not beat up as much. So,
do you think part of that is just the perception with, it's easy for us old farts to blame social media and everything, but the fact that you have access to people hitting quote PRs in their gym more often, but you don't see the cost of that, right? Yes. So I've often wondered if new lifters coming up seeing all these people break PRs, but they don't see that their career potentially got ended, they disappeared within a year. They don't see the cost of what's associated with that. Where I think if you're, like take the World's Strongest Man, right? You're competing in those events, you see which athletes show up year in and year out, and you kind of know who's injured, who doesn't make it, who washed out. You kind of get to see everything to some degree. Yep. Or with just like the PR flashes on Instagram, it's like, oh, that person went away. I don't even know who that was. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, he did that.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's like anything. Social media has good and bad. Like definitely. Now we have access. We can see the stuff going on, and we can get inspired if you use it correctly. Yes. And then I also can see it in my own athletes. Like we get jaded. Like, oh man, I'm so weak comparatively, because now you have access, and they don't realize that you're stronger than 99% of the population. You're looking at the 0.1%. Your friends list is the 0.1% of the population, and you're comparing and you're putting yourself down for that, and you're also trying to push yourself to that crazy limit. It's easy to get in this tiny fishbowl, and start just comparing yourself to that, and you can, like I said, it can be bad, it can be good. You can use that as, hey, that's pretty awesome. I'm going to use that as motivation and keep just chipping away. Or you can get down on yourself. I need to push it harder. Jim, Joe, and him both hit 900 squats. And I suck. I'm only at 850. Dude, you're at 850. Settle down. Give it time. You'll be there and past there.
Yeah.
So
evidence for that. What both you guys are saying this, I think, is the whole concept of whatever happened to, right? You didn't used to have that. Nobody's going to say whatever happened to Eddie Cohn. Well, what do you mean? He's, he is that Conan on the throne. He is King Conan. Everybody still remembers, as opposed to, like you said, a week later, you're buried under 1,000 other social media posts. Whatever happened to so-and-so? That's, to me, evidence that this is happening, right? Because we didn't used to say whatever happened to Frank Zane.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, that's the deal with longevity. If you want to be remembered, you can't just do it once. You'll be remembered as the guy that did it once, and then you're forgotten.
Yeah.
If you want to be in the history books, you need to be up there for 10 years doing it. Like, oh, Eddie Cohn broke this and this and this and this and this,
multiple weight classes.
Yeah, his wiki page reads like an encyclopedia of strength.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the people that get if you want to be Ed Cohn of 2047. You're going to have to slow down and put in a career, because nobody's going to remember the dude that did it once. It's just not. I mean, not near as much. You're going to be the dude sitting in the bar. I played high school football. I was a star.
Right.
God. You
right.
don't want to be that guy.
No thanks.
I squatted 900 at 22 years old. Well, what'd you do after that? Yeah, I was wrecked, and I quit. And now I'm Jabba the Hutt.
So,
right, yep.
And that's true in professional sports too. I mean, people remember people like Tom Brady and people who played at a high level for year after year after year after year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Montana. And
very right.
It used to be that type.
Yeah.
It's
not the guy, I made the game, and then I was gone.
Right.
You know? And that's not saying that football, you need to have it's impossible, damn near, to have a 10-year
Oh,
NFL.
yeah, because you're doing the contact sport.
Yes. But, you know, but I mean, it's in the same line. So
yeah, same idea. Yeah, I agree.
Especially because in strength sports and muscle sports, like I said, people peak. Football players don't peak in their mid to late 30s, you know, and we do if you can just avoid the blowout.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, no one's running at you when you're taking a squat either.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So, no, that's about it. I just want to share some of that. And it was good seeing Windler. Congratulations to Caden. It sounds like he's getting a news story done from here, too. I want to give a shout out to him. I didn't run into any listeners, I don't think. But I didn't run into, there wasn't a lot of people there, again.
Yeah.
I ran into people I knew, so they're probably listeners, but a very limited crowd. It was good. It was good to get in the convention center. I hope the Arnold's open this year, because I want to go to that.
Yeah.
So,
good stuff.
Crazy times. So, I'm back until Christmas, guys, so I should be here. So,
rock on.
Perfect.
All right.
Have
Sounds
a good weekend.
See you guys later. Hey listeners, have you seen the store at IronRadio.org? There are 3 halls in the store. One for Phil, one for Fortress, and one for myself, Dr. Lowry, and they're thematic. So you can go into our Halls of Iron store and choose based on your goal. If you need something to learn or read or something nutritional, you can look in my store, Lonnie's store. If you want something about injury prevention or competition, then take a look at Phil's Hall of Iron. And if you want something about motivation or daily training, Fortress's Hall has what you're looking for. There are some fun, heroic descriptors as you browse through the stores. We try to make it a little more fun than the average boring online store. And whether you're a novice lifter or someone more experienced, you can take heart that you're not wasting your time. The things that we put in each Hall of Iron are actually based on our own recommendations. Protein powders that we know to be good, knee sleeves, wraps of some kind, things that Fortress uses in his own training. The stuff you see, you know is good. This way you don't waste time. So check out the Iron Radio store at ironradio.org and let us know what you think on the forums, and certainly you can request products and we will screen them before they go in. So thanks for listening. Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.